Hey guys, welcome back to the Arthritis Podcast, official podcast of digital and creative media works. Where each week we take something from pop culture and try to break it down to better understand it. My name is David.
Should we try that again, David?
I did it. I nailed it first time. Fuck you. The edit will make it.
My name is Ben.
Ben's here. We've also got returning guest Laura.
Hello.
And Aaron, good friend of the show.
Hello.
Also, I guess they're both kind of regulars. I don't know why I'm calling them
What
guests.
happened to me
here.
being like
You are part of the.
Like what was
the
this
show
conversation we had like last?
Laura, it's
time?
nearly midnight. My brain isn't working so good right now.
Oh god, it is nearly midnight.
The reason that we're awake well past our bedtimes is that it's the biggest cinematic event theoretically that people are going to talk
theory,
about.
I guess.
I guess.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. I don't know. But the reason we're all gathered here today... I made it sound like church. The reason we're all gathered here today is to worship the holy altar of Disney, because today we are talking about the legacy of Avengers Endgame.
Oh boy.
Finally, it's here, boys and girls.
It happened. It came, it went. It took about 3 hours.
Oh, God, it was a long time.
Jesus
3
Christ.
hours and
Yeah.
1 minute.
I feel like we need to lie down after.
Really?
Oh
Exactly?
my
I
God.
think so.
Oh my god.
Before we get into
That
the...
1 minute could have just been like just Hulk eating. They
Just
could
Hulk
have just not
snacking.
had the Hulk snack.
No,
the
when he
taco
was,
scene.
when he was doing selfies.
That was the taco scene.
The taco scene was probably the
taco
minute.
scene.
The
Yeah, it was the
fucking
minute.
selfies. Jeez.
There was a lot of stuff they could have
There's a lot
probably
of
cut.
just fluff in this film.
Do you
yeah.
think well, look, Ben's very
wanna do a
salty because
round-
it's very
we
late.
wanna
Yeah,
do a round table?
I was gonna say before we get into the summary, we'll do a quick round table of what everyone thought. So we'll start with Laura and we'll work our way back. So Laura, what'd you think?
Well, I started this film not knowing what to expect, and I ended it fucking bawling my eyes out because that's what I do when I get hit in the feels. So
Okay.
that happened.
So Laura cried. I also cried a bit, but I'll get to me in a minute. Aaron, what'd you think?
It was good.
Yeah.
It wasn't Guardians good.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't Thor Ragnarok good.
But it was okay.
But it's maybe third on my list.
Nice. Wait, are you talking like Guardians 2 or Guardians 1?
One.
Okay, interesting.
Only one Guardians film.
Okay.
All right.
We can
right.
come back
There's
to that.
some
in a
opinions here
different
that the
time.
rest
Not
of us
come back to
maybe
that.
don't share.
I thought it was fine. We talked about before going in that I just truly don't give a shit about these films anymore.
Yeah.
And Patrick pulled me up on that a few months ago and was like, you do, you just don't care enough to have an opinion. I was like, yeah, that's probably about it. So I thought it was fine.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of stuff in this that I want to unpack. I did cry. Oh, by the way, full spoilers. Like, it's in the title
Oh,
of the
yeah.
everything. Literally, it says Spoilercast. We're like, full spoilers. If you haven't seen it, fucking tune out unless you don't give a shit about these. But what I will say is, yeah, I did cry at the cheeseburger bit at the end. That was the only time where I cried.
That
I was
the
like,
moment you were like cheeseburgers.
because it was like
Oh,
a sad
man.
dad moment where it was like,
Yeah.
remember how he's like, your dad loved cheeseburgers. I was like, he did. Yeah, it was not my best moment. What'd you reckon, Ben?
I liked it. I don't know whether that's just the tiredness talking or if I actually liked it. But
We'll see in like 24 hours once you've digested it.
yeah, I'll probably have a different opinion tomorrow. But I thought, like, just as like a culmination. I think for me that was the main thing. Like, as just a culmination of so many fucking films, like 10 years of these films.
Right, as an event.
Yeah, it was quite incredible.
In the same way that when we talked about Infinity War and we said, like, it may not stand on its own merits as a film. Like, it's sort of... I don't know. I think analyzing it as its own package is difficult.
This stands like even less so on its own as a film because it relies so heavily on previous.
It's basically
films.
Acts 4 and 5 of Infinity War, and we can kind of unpack that once I've gone through the summary, because I think this is pretty telling that the first word I've written down is following the events of Infinity War, because that's
Yeah.
what this film is. So
Yeah.
I'm going to try and get through this. It's quite chunky and meaty. I might need to pause in the middle. So those of you who...
Get comfy.
I was going to say get comfy, close your eyes, have a minute. Here we go. Following the events of Infinity War, Tony Stark and Nebula are adrift in space. As it seems they'll run out of oxygen, they are saved by Carol Danvers. Back on Earth, the Avengers scramble, taking Peter Quill's old ship to hunt Thanos. They find a retired Thanos on a farming planet, and after learning Thanos has destroyed the Infinity Stones, Thor beheads him. The Avengers retreat to Earth, somewhat defeated, resigned to the fact that those who are vanished are gone forever. 5 years later, and a dazed Scott Lang returns from the quantum realm where only a few hours have passed. Scott convinces Captain America that time travel is possible using the quantum realm. Meanwhile, Natasha is running an intergalactic Avengers-style team with the remaining Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy. The gang visits Tony Stark on his farm, where we learn he has a daughter and has settled with Pepper Potts. Tony refuses to help, so the gang heads to find Hulk, where Bruce Banner and the Hulk have merged into one Grey Hulk. Bruce and gang nail some elements of time travel, but Tony Stark arrives with a device that acts as the final piece of the puzzle, a space-time GPS. The Avengers reassemble, convincing a grieving Thor to help, and summon the remaining members of the team from the corners of the galaxy, save Captain Marvel. The team works out that back through their history, they can grab most of the stones if they split up into teams. They end up with 3 teams. Captain America, Tony Stark, and Scott head back to 2012 and the events of the first Avengers to claim the Mind Stone from Loki's scepter and the Space Stone from the Tesseract. Meanwhile, Hulk splits off and visits the Sorcerer Supreme to try and convince her to give up the Time Stone. Rhodey and Nebula head to Morag to recover the Power Stone from where Peter Quill steals it during the events of the first Guardians of the Galaxy film. Thor and Rocket Raccoon travel to Asgard, where in the past, when Jane is currently being healed from the events of Thor 2, they successfully extract the Reality Stone
they leave.
from her body.
That's where he gets Mjolnir as
yeah,
well.
and then they leave, and Thor recovers Mjolnir. Elsewhere, Nat and Clint head to Vormir to liaise with the Red Skull and bargain for the Soul Stone. Back in 2012, Cap and the gang get into trouble, and due to the events following the New York incident, Loki steals the Tesseract and vanishes. Captain America and Tony travel further back in time to the base where Dr. Zola and Hank Pym originally stored both the Tesseract and the Pym particles in the lead up to the events of Steve Rogers becoming a super soldier. Tony and Steve collect the stone and head back home. Clint and Nat have a tussle, and eventually Nat throws herself off the cliffs, granting Clint the Soul Stone. Meanwhile, Nebula from the past syncs up her network memories with future Nebula, and Thanos is alerted to the Avengers' plan. The gang reunites in the present, unaware that Nebula is not the Nebula who they think she is. Tony Stark uses his nanotechnology to forge a new gauntlet, and Hulk, with the combined intellect of Banner and the power of the Hulk, snaps his fingers and brings everybody back. At this very moment, Nebula opens a time portal, and Thanos' entire ship is brought through. Thanos glasses Avengers HQ. The gang scrambles inside and must band together to face Thanos. After a decent scuffle and everyone's on the ropes, Captain America summons Mjolnir and beats the crap out of Thanos briefly, in what seems like a respite from the terror. However, Thanos unleashes his entire army, it seems, and for the entire world, with the remaining Avengers broken, this is the end. At that very moment, portals begin to open, and the Vanished return. With the entirety of Wakanda's army, the sorcerers, and all of our heroes returned, Captain America steps up to the head of his newly formed army, and finally, the Avengers assemble. A long battle of keep it away from Thanos ensues, where we visit each of the characters and their reunions with their respective significant others, friends, and allies, all the while keeping the gauntlet from Thanos and trying to beat back his army. Ultimately, Captain Marvel returns, shattering Thanos' ship in half. In the final desperate act to claim his victory, Thanos is about to snap his fingers with the new gauntlet when Tony Stark intervenes, stealing the stones via the use of his nanotechnology. As a hush falls over the battle, Tony readies his fingers and announces he is Iron Man, and snaps his fingers, destroying the entirety of Thanos' army. And finally, a defeated, weary Thanos is reduced to nothing but dust. Tony passes as a result of his efforts. We then pick up in the events following, and Captain America heads into the past to put the Infinity Stones back where they belong. He returns an old man, having lived a life with Peggy Carter. Steve passes on the shield to Sam, and we end our film on a shot of Peggy and Steve finally having their dance after all this time. Credits. So, I don't even know where to start. So let's just talk through. We all agree that the opening scene is quite well put together. When we see Clint's family disappear,
Right.
I thought it was a nice way to open the film, reminding us of the events and what happened. It was a little I don't know, not dark, but there was a sense in the cinema. I don't think they were expecting that. I don't know. The audience we had, by way of explanation.
Avengers film, Marvel films have always opened with just a dark screen and a low rumbling, overlooking some city, and that's how Marvel films start.
This is a hard cut to a close up of his daughter with a bow and arrow.
Yeah, it was. I thought it was another trailer. I was like, everything's dark. I better turn my phone off. And I'm like, the movie is starting. Oh
Right.
shit!
That's what happens when they put the lights down, Bam.
No, but
sometimes they'll put one or
They'll
two
put
trailers.
one or two, yeah.
But
no,
it
I know
is
what you mean.
no, we're just gonna start.
it's an interesting point though that's how the film starts as a part two. It's not a film by itself.
No.
Yeah.
So I wonder if the
Yeah.
Russo brothers sat down and they went, if you watch,
Yeah.
because Infinity War ends. The final end credits scene
Yeah.
is Captain Marvel returning, isn't it? Where they page her
Yeah.
through time
Yeah.
and space, or whatever. She returns. Then you hard cut to this with Clint, and then you cut to
I mean,
Avengers
if you want to
HQ.
watch a 5-hour-long film, you can do that.
But that's what it feels like they were going for. Because
Right.
in another, like in the Russos have a very specific style, which we talked about walking out of the theater, where they have certain things they always do. Where when they change locations, they'll go from a dark screen, a hard cut, to like a big bright background. Everyone squints, and then you get used to the location.
Yes.
Like they have some stylistic choices, and the openings are one of those. So this feels like a deliberate choice on their behalf to not.
Yeah.
do
It
what
was
they always do?
also one of those things where it's like, oh, in the last film, it's like, oh yeah, where's Hawkeye? And it's like, this is where he was.
Right.
Getting his
He was
life
having a
fucking
family.
destroyed.
Well, he was on house arrest, wouldn't he? Because that
Did
Andrew
he
Yeah.
was
retire
on.
or something? What?
Yeah, well, so from the events of Civil War, Scott Lang and Hawkeye are on house arrest because they owned, like, they actually admitted to their crimes because they had families that they wanted to protect.
Okay.
So they were the ones that were, like, final go on house arrest. That's
Right.
why they weren't in Infinity War.
Yeah.
Well, also,
Right.
Ant-Man was in-
M was banished from time
he
and
was in
space.
the Quantum Realm, which you guys know if you watched Ant-Man 2, the second Ant-Man.
Didn't watch it.
which I did.
Yeah.
That's why
I
this
also saw
film made sense.
Yeah. That was a weird, I mean, obviously the whole franchise is reliant on the other, like, this film
Yeah,
relies on
but
you haven't
it's
seen
just
it all.
weird that like Ant-Man would be a thing that's like.
Well, I guess so is Thor 2, the Thor that no one likes. Like, they were
Well,
like...
I mean, Thor 2's not really a big part of it. It's just like they explain it. It's like, oh yeah, she absorbed the thing. We just need to get it off her.
It's like 1/5 of the story, though, if you think about the balance of the way this... Also,
1/6, but
is it 1/6? Is there 6 now?
there are 6.
Yeah, there are
things.
6.
Fuck me.
One for each finger and one for the back of the hand.
Oh, yeah.
5.
5.
That's it.
Thick. I'm not good at maths. Did you guys give a shit? Okay, here's the thing. Did you go? Okay, there's a few like twists in the story where obviously it's a send off for Captain America, it's a send off for Tony Stark. We
Yeah.
know that those two gentlemen are moving on with their careers.
Yeah.
I assume Robert Downey Jr. has to be retiring soon because he's done too much cocaine in his lifetime to keep acting.
Right.
Like he needs to just sit down
Sure,
and chill out.
become
before we get
Scientologist.
into this, can we
Yeah.
talk about Natasha real quick?
I was going to circle back to that because I was
Yeah.
going to talk about the 3 main characters of the film,
Yeah.
which is
Right.
Steve Rogers. I almost said Captain America. Steve Rogers, Tony Stark, and Natasha Romanoff. They, in my opinion, are the 3 protagonists. If you want to give them that label, what's interesting about her? I mean, you can probably speak to this again, but there is this element to it that she kind of, when everyone else is gone and they're scattered, she's the one that holds it all together. She kind of runs the
Yeah.
intergalactic Avengers. She's sort of sitting in that chair. And it's interesting that she's then the one that has to sacrifice herself. I don't know, what did you think of kind of her inclusion in this?
I think they're gonna bring her back.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I know it sucks. But
What makes you say that?
Guardians 3. Because I reckon the plot for that movie is going to be Peter Quill goes to get his girlfriend back. It's gonna.
She just kind of is there.
Well, don't we have a girlfriend already? Don't we have Gamora's back, wouldn't she?
No, it's
You know,
It's
he
different.
wants he
It's
wants the real Gamora.
past Gamora.
Once-
Yeah,
He wants the Gamora
it's
that he
weird,
got
like-
to know.
Well, the
it's
self-actualized
weird and tied
Gamora.
up in like weird time travel
Yeah.
shit, like which we'll get into.
That's curious,
We're
though.
gonna get into
Yeah,
it.
but I guess we'll get to that later.
And I
but,
think
like,
if Guardians 3 does that, where they bring that Gamora back, then there's gonna be that scene in a far off movie where
where they get Romanoff.
they get Romanov back.
I mean, surely this is like the end of like Peter Quill and Gamora's like relationship then, because if they like, there's no way they redo that whole.
Well,
I'll be pissed off if they do.
because
Is that like the annoying trope
but
where
you
it's
can't.
just like
I
that
don't.
like rom-com thing.
He's
where it's
just
like,
gonna be
she
blue
doesn't
balls
know who I
forever.
am,
I don't
but
think
I'm
you.
still in love with her.
But with the complexity of that relationship and the way it's rendered
it's
in
not complex.
no, well,
dumb.
in Guardians 2 it is. It's,
Oh, right,
it's dumb in Infinity
Guardians,
War.
right? In Guardians.
In Guardians. But like I don't think you can get. I don't think they can be like she doesn't know why I'm blah blah. Like, because she's not. The reason that they kind of theoretically get together in Infinity War is that by the end of Guardians 2, they're both closer to being self-actualized people. And they're both ready to get into a relationship in some ways, but not yet. So, I don't know. I don't think you can have a relationship between Gamora, even if she grows and changes and stuff, and Peter, because they grew and changed together. That's what brought them together. So you're right. They would have to get back old Gamora, or they'd have
Yeah.
to say, these two are at odds again, and they're never going to have any chemistry
Yeah.
or romance.
Yeah,
Which drains...
I don't think that's gonna work.
No, it drains some of that story of some of its really interesting potency with those two characters in conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Do you want? I don't. Do you want them to bring back Romanov? Like,
I just think it's gonna be symptomatic.
Yeah.
I honestly, like, there's no reason for her to
comics.
be
It's
in
comics.
these films
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
comic books, you can do anything.
Yeah.
Batman's died so many times. Superman's died so many times. No one stays dead forever.
Yeah, the interesting part is, now that you mentioned, I forgot for a second there that she actually died, but
Yeah.
her death felt less impactful to me than the
Romanov's?
other two.
Well, I think that's on purpose. Like, she's the utilitarian of the group. She's not like the hot. Like, Tony Stark is the intelligence. Captain America is the soul. She's the material that holds it all together. I don't think she's supposed. Her death comes midway through ish. The fact that the way that they have her die, the blood combines with her hair, and it's Black Widow again. It's like the blonde is gone. I think it's supposed to be more of a temporary, like, as Aaron was saying, like a temporary reprieve for that character. I don't think it's a send-off. I think if they were going to do a send-off, she would go off into the sunset doing something.
But
Like,
the other
Yeah.
thing that kind of tips me off to it is everyone's talking about trying to get her back.
Not really
Right,
finality.
yeah. And-
they haven't let go of it, right?
Yeah, no.
Right.
Like they've let go of Tony Stark.
let go of
Even
Tony
Pepper
Stark.
sort of gives him a send off. She's like, "You can rest now."
right.
But
They let go of
they
Steve
haven't let
Rogers.
Yeah.
go of her.
You're right. They're still kind of chomping at the bit. But that's what makes me think that with this Loki TV show they're chatting about, maybe Scarlet Witch and Loki are bumming through time trying to get their friendos back. Do you know what I mean?
You reckon that's where they're going to sort this problem out? In the
Romanov,
Loki
they go
TV
fetch
series.
Romanov and Gamora. It's the unlikely buddy cop TV show that no one ever wanted or asked for.
But we're getting, for some reason.
Yeah, but let's touch back on the protagonist aspect of this film, because as we discussed with Infinity War, Thanos is really like the main character of that story. I don't know who this film is about. I guess Captain America. I guess Tony Stark.
I suppose.
Yeah.
It's kind of starts off kind of following the similar kind of footsteps to Civil War.
There were a
when, like,
lot
Tony
of
comes
like,
back.
but it is very much about them patching up their relationship and like learning to work together again.
But from a narrative structure perspective, like who's the driving force behind it?
Oh, I'd almost say it's Thanos again.
Right.
I don't
But
think it
But
is.
it can't be. It can't be.
He's the
I don't
villain
think it
of
is
the
at all.
piece, sure, but like he doesn't
Maybe
he
really
gets-
like.
The movie doesn't need to have a protagonist.
The thing-
Bring
Yeah,
English,
it's got so
high
many
school
people-
English.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to have a protagonist.
Yeah, I don't think it's Thanos.
I don't-
Ignore
I
me.
don't-
I'm
So
I don't
like
think
Ant-Man
it's one.
functions as kind of an inciting sort of force there.
Well, he's the inciting hook for
So
sure.
Yeah.
like what I really loved about this movie was they didn't ignore the fact that this awful fucking thing just happened to them, and for 5 years,
Yeah.
like Captain America's in like a recovery
Yeah,
group.
he's in that.
He's like, oh, you went on a date? That's great. You know, you're leaving the past behind, and he's thinking about Peggy the entire
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
this is
yeah,
Also,
doing
that,
it.
Yeah.
that fucking shot of the big tombs with the people's names on them.
Yeah, the
I
more.
was like,
Oh
oh,
my
they went for a
God.
fucking war memorial. Like, that's
Yeah.
brave. Like, I was like, damn,
yeah.
going hard in the paint. Yeah.
That's a lot of people.
It's what's half of the people aren't.
Yes,
Yeah, that-
it's half of them.
I assume. Well, not half of them because Scott's mine.
I was gonna say he's the one.
No, okay, you're right. God damn it, Ben. But you're right. It doesn't need a protagonist, but like, you know, when the first one had such a strong through line of Thanos being the kind of emotional core of that story, I guess by that same merit, Nebula is kind of the emotional core of this. I don't know, like,
No.
like, but I'm
hard
trying to
no
place.
from me.
She's like too.
She's just like a weird utility to make
She's kinda-
Thanos exist in this film because he immediately gets
Oh,
his
she's the
head chopped.
MacGuffin.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
She,
She
her,
is.
That's troubling.
Like I feel
Oh,
like
right.
towards the end, it's definitely like Tony Stark.
she's yeah. Well, I mean, Tony and Cap for
Even,
sure.
Like,
But no, that's in-
past Gamora in this film is just kind of odd.
Yeah.
For one, it relies so heavily on, like, it leans so hard into like Gamora's character of the other films. Drive her character development from being just
Yeah.
Evil version of
Basically, they say,
Gamora.
"Oh, we know you've got it in you," and she goes,
they just
"Yeah,
like
I really
they
do."
cram all of that development from the two Guardians
Into,
and like,
like, 30
into just
seconds.
like 30 seconds.
do you
Yeah.
It's just like
do you think that? I think what happened was the Russos went, okay, We have this really
Like,
cool
we know
idea.
she's good.
Well, no, they were like, we have this really cool idea for a film, and there's going to be a point in the script where they're in a writer's room trying to solve a problem where they're like, how do we get Thanos into the future? And someone went, what if Gamora, the cybernetic person, has
Nebula.
a network? Nebula, sorry.
Nebula.
What if Nebula has a network? And everyone went, what? And they went, yeah, a network that we've
And
never
there's
mentioned before.
Two
Yeah.
nebulas, they interfere with the transcombobulator.
And his,
And
you can transfer memories.
You can
The goopy goop
you
goes
can
into one.
try locate the matrix on the GUI
Hey,
and
here's a question. There was a whole discussion at the start of the film about time travel where they were like, you can't interact with your past self. Captain America beats the shit out of his past self. Nothing
Yeah.
changes.
Nebula kills herself.
Yeah.
She kills
Nebula
us-
Yeah,
shoots
she
herself in the
literally
Well,
chest.
no, but they do
Past
spend a lot
her.
of the time saying, literally listing off popular time travel films
And then
and
saying
then
that they're
saying
wrong.
this is not
Yeah.
how it works. Like
It-
they do spend a lot of time
They're like, oh
Yeah.
no,
saying like this
is
isn't time travel, this is something else, and we'll vaguely describe it with some of the
Right.
supreme.
It's
Yeah.
well,
Pizza.
it is alternate timelines. Like
Yeah.
that's what we're.
They created a new timeline,
But they-
essentially,
Yeah.
but like
Yeah,
their
but
timeline
they-
still springs from this old timeline where all this stuff in their new timeline
Yes.
couldn't have happened. It's weird.
Oh, so it's
it's
like
it's
like
Back to the Future plus.
No, it's the Star
I think.
Trek. It's the Star Trek reboot
Where it,
where it's
Wow.
technically part of the old
Oh,
continuity
Yeah.
Oh,
because
yeah.
Spock's in it.
Yeah.
But then, have you seen the Star Trek
Yeah,
reboot?
yeah,
yeah, you've seen
Spock's
it,
in
right?
It's like a soft reboot where like it's the same timeline, but it's an alternate reality time. I think that's what they're gonna go for. Is they're gonna be like, the past is a little bit different, and here's 5 films set in the past that are a bit
Well, I
different.
think-
Oh.
I don't know. I think
Here's
I don't
Avengers
think,
1
no.
again.
No, I don't think they're gonna do that.
No, I
think
know.
They just all those throwaway lines were just so they could be
They could do what they wanted.
Yeah, so they could do it, and not it's not lazy, but it's just they didn't want to fuck around with people like us or people similar to
Well,
like
I mean,
us, but just less academically honest. Like going on about the time travel's dumb.
Well, I'm
People
less
just
'cause
like
it's like,
nitpicking
no,
it
'cause
and
it's-
going, oh, it
I'm
makes
in
no
the
sense.
universe, they've explained that
Right.
nothing's consistent.
I'm less interested.
It
In,
doesn't work the way you think it does.
I'm less interested in the mechanics of the time travel.
Good.
I'm more interested in the way that the way that they use that to shape the story and the narrative. Because my contention would be, I suppose, that when you get to that point in the narrative where you need a MacGuffin to bring Thanos through, there are other ways to do that would have made the film more interesting than just being like, yeah, past Nebula's evil. Remember?
Well, I think like they use the only major points where like shit is weird with like
I
time
mean-
travel is like Nebula killing her past self and what's the other one?
I mean, Nebula.
Captain
being
America
evil.
punching himself.
Captain America punching himself. Like those are just like character development moments that
But
just
why-
use the
So,
framework of
so why can't that MacGuffin with that that Nebula insert they use? Why can't that be a moment where one of the characters that we followed, obviously Gamora, past Gamora has to go through some character development, but why can't they use that instead of just a dumb MacGuffin? Why couldn't that have been like someone that we know and trust? I mean, obviously, now the Avengers are going to betray
Honestly,
the other
though,
Avengers, but
like Nebula being evil, like thinking about that in context of like the first Guardians film, that doesn't really feel right to me now that I think about it. Because in the first Guardians film, she meets up with Ronan, and Ronan's like, "Do you want to betray your father?" And she's like, "I hate that guy. I'm gonna betray him."
well, it's not that she's evil; it's that she's the daughter of an abusive father, and she's trapped in that cycle. But I know what you mean. I just think that I don't know.
But like, she gets chances to betray him in this film, and she's like, "Nah."
but again, it's like the events of that film haven't happened yet, because like.
Yeah, but
Peter
it's the
Quill doesn't
same.
get
It's
the
the
power
same
set.
point in.
It's the same point in her timeline, but the events of that first film, where she's seeing Gamora in the battlefield fighting with the Guardians, haven't happened. So I'm with you, but I don't know. I just wonder if there wasn't a way they could have used that narrative point to progress someone else's character in a way that we haven't seen before. Maybe you could have picked up, because I know a lot of people got vanished, but you could have picked up another character and said, well, let's try and get some movement happening here. I don't know. There could have been something there where even if it was like Thor. I mean, he just gets a pep talk from his mom and he's like back or whatever, but like that could have been a cool thing. Like maybe maybe his shitty grieving and drinking or whatever causes some further issue with the plan. Like there's I don't know.
Liver failure.
Yeah, something. Like anything, man.
Can he get liver failure?
Probably not.
just zaps
Centuries
himself.
old god.
Yeah. Just anything there that could have progressed the story a bit more, progressed the characters instead of just being like, yeah, remember Nebula was evil. I don't know.
Good to see that
Yeah.
Korg wasn't dusted.
Korg was
Yeah.
chilling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's having a good old
playing
time.
Fortnite.
Playing Fortnite. Yikes,
Oh.
man.
Oh god.
Fuck that
Do you
reference.
remember the Fortnite?
Do you remember when they did
They-
Fortnite in
Remember
like
when they played
film
Fortnite?
franchise?
Yeah.
They're-
How much
Oh my
money
God.
would they have got? Like, Epic would have given, like, that's a
Oh,
lot of money for that kind of
man.
insert. There were, like, 2 major product placements.
can
One
Google
was
it.
That's
Fortnite.
like 10-cent money right
yeah,
there. Yeah.
the other was the Samsung phone that, what's his name gets a call from his, that Hawkeye gets his call from
Oh
his
yeah,
wife.
that was a
Just yeah,
long
you see all the
shot.
Audis in the
That's
film.
that's always been the sponsor. It's Marvel cars have been Audis since I'm
Yeah,
into.
yeah, it's always been Audis.
It's
But, like,
nuts.
that
There's still a
Fortnite
lot.
plot, that's gotta be.
Hang on, I'm
a
googling
few
how much it cost
million.
them.
Like, how much did Epic spend? I mean, 10-cent money.
It would have been 10
Oh
cent
no,
money.
hang on. There's an Avengers Endgame event coming to Fortnite this week. It's a partnership.
Well, they
Oh,
yeah.
Oh,
No, they're
This-
adding
this is-
Thanos
Right.
again.
Yeah,
they
this
is
did
what
happened last
previously,
time.
yeah.
There's a $3 million prize
What?
for this event.
Wow.
Yeah,
Holy
I mean, there's a guy
shit.
who
Doing
did a,
what for Fortniting the
a
best?
Fortnite comp, man.
One, like, some DJ did a live show.
Marshmallow is the one
Marshmallow.
you're thinking of.
Yeah, did a live show in Fortnite. Like, he did, like, a live, and it was literally part of his tour. Like, his tour list was, like, Europe, like, Asia, America, Fortnite. Australia. Like, it's just like...
Australia comes up to it.
It's wild.
Yeah, I think we did.
Like, the
Don't-
set has things like, oh, let me see you do that marsh dance.
Oh, it's really weird.
I'd
Because
rather-
he was like, everyone show off your favorite emote, where it's like, Dan Olsen's done a really good video on this, but
Okay.
like, it's
Yeah, watch
Anyway,
Dan
okay.
Olsen's video
Fortnite
on
is-
this.
disgusting.
don't quote me on the 3 million thing. There's like 10 articles that disagree. It's fine. But point being,
I'm not surprised.
what a
by it.
weird contemporary reference for a series of films that have generally not been pop culturally relevant. Like they've been their own things, but they haven't like referenced things that are happening in the real world.
They haven't, they
Yeah.
haven't really dated themselves.
It's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
they
what I
really
meant.
are dating themselves
yeah.
with this one.
I mean,
Especially
is the bet they're making that Fortnite's going to be around forever? Because that is a bold.
That's a
move.
That is a
bold
very
bet.
bold
Yeah.
move.
I
That's
mean,
a
that's
very
not,
bold bet.
It's just straight up false.
We don't know
Yeah.
that for
it doesn't
sure.
take a lot of research to
You
see how
can't
false that is.
prove that.
People thought League of Legends was going to be around forever. Fucking look where that is.
Yeah, it's true.
You
I
know?
mean, it still exists.
World of
but,
Warcraft?
like,
Still here,
Like,
mate.
do you want me to continue listing
Give
some
me-
of the
give me
biggest
two
games
more.
of all time?
Give me 2 more.
Well, I was going to say Counter Strike, but that did
That's
kind of
the-
come back.
Yeah.
Doom.
No.
Quake. No, I don't know. Like, no, it's really only like look, World of Warcraft, League of Legends,
Yeah.
Fortnite. Those are like the 3 contemporary like biggest.
Dota
games of
was
all
Yeah.
big for a while.
time. Not like
Dota 2's
the-
competitive.
Dota 2?
Minecraft.
Minecraft's still around.
Minecraft's
Yeah.
still,
around.
It's still
Minecraft's
big.
still big.
It's still big business.
relevant.
yeah,
and-
Minecraft is like weird though because where like things like Fortnite and League of Legends are big like multiplayer online, like esportsy sort of things.
Fighty McShooties.
Um,
Yeah.
Minecraft is buildy art.
Yeah. Buildy
Exactly,
Buildy
and like people
McCreative,
play
David.
it like multiplayer and stuff on servers, but it's a much more solitary experience than anything else.
You haven't played on the
I was
ruthless
gonna
PvP
say you
servers.
haven't played UHC with the rest of us. It is interesting though that to put that kind of referential material in the film that is supposed to be
like the capstone.
it's the thing.
Of 10
The
years
Russo
of
brothers are
Marvel.
probably gonna go lie in a grave for 10 years and then resurface and like go make other. I don't think they can. Here's my theory. I don't think you can make this. I don't think the Russo brothers can do this and then go and do other things.
The whole like
They need to take like a holiday for
the whole
5 years.
Fortnite thing should have just been cut. To be honest,
Someone on
Yeah.
the
like they could have had him playing video games, but and they could
Anything.
have kept like the Noob Blaster 83 is.
but they could have done
69, thank you very
Okay.
much. It was New Blaster 69.
Was it actually Noob Blaster?
Love it. They could have done
course.
anything. It could have been like we've seen it in TV shows before. A generic game
video game
shooter
yeah.
that we don't have to look at.
or even just Call of Duty. That
Or
would
just-
have dated less hard because
Do
there's
what every-
always going to be a Call of Duty.
Do what everyone's done. Do like a Gears of War thing. It's cheap to insert. It doesn't really age it because people are still playing that as like the single player.
Yeah,
like
it just looks like a video game.
it just looks like no one who isn't a gamer looks at Gears of War and goes, "Oh, Gears of War." They go, "Oh, a game."
oh, a video game.
Whereas you look
Yeah.
at Fortnite and everyone
It's
in
so
the
You look at
entire
Fortnite,
world.
everyone's
right?
Like, what the fuck?
It's like, and it's so jarring with like the dark color palette and like the grading of the
Also,
film,
just
just
a-
to
And
see
then
this
the
bright
bright
Fortnite
yeah.
screen. Like, did you guys notice that?
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
yeah, it
Well,
was,
I mean,
it
that-
was
this-
disgusting.
It's the same with the phone. Like when the phone was calling and you could literally see
Yeah.
like the Android
Oh.
buttons.
Did it?
You're
I
like,
didn't.
that's a Samsung
I didn't.
phone.
I didn't know it was a
I
Samsung.
literally picked
I
it
didn't
like
realize it either.
Yeah.
But
Laura and I don't. We don't
yeah.
know. To me, it looked like a phone call.
I'm
It was
actually,
specifically like getting a phone call on like the new Android
I know they have a partnership
for Samsung.
Oh no with Fortnight. We've just established that.
Just
I'm,
fucking.
I'm really surprised just from a structural point of view because they're keen on playing with the fourth wall a little bit that they weren't all there watching the Deadpool movie.
Oh, with Ryan Reynolds as Depp. They should have been
yeah.
watching Detective Pikachu. He hasn't even come out
Yes, yeah, Detective Pikachu.
yet. Yeah.
Then you gotta pay those Nintendo dollars and.
But hang on, but that's an interesting point too. This is one of the first Marvel films where they've actively acknowledged that a bunch of other films exist in this universe. There are some clips and stuff in the previous ones about films, but like this is the first one where they listed a bunch of films that exist in our timeline that also exist in theirs.
Yeah. So,
like this Star Wars.
they're talking about Back to the Future and
does that mean that because Star Wars is referenced in a few of the Marvel films, which means that Star Wars exists in this universe, which means that
Disney.
which means that the events that transpired to create Disney exist, but they didn't then make Marvel films. They just kept making Star Wars, and no one ever went to Bob Iger and was like, "Hey, do you guys want to buy Marvel?"
I mean, I think that kind of discussion of like films in films that's a whole thing.
I'm
It's
more
a rabbit
like,
hole.
that's-
I,
you know,
well, I'm more interested
like
in it
how
tonally.
in what's that film when they watch The Graduate
oh shit,
and like she cries and he doesn't.
Yeah.
Like that's just like a fucking fever dream because
it's very
what
meta
is that?
cinematic.
That's
yeah.
Oh, that's the Don John, not Don John.
Not Don John.
The one based on Don John.
I know what you mean.
That one that we've done the episode on.
Yeah.
Pod
Yeah.
Hashtag.
Yeah, you're right.
Um,
But I guess the what I'm more interested in is like tonally to do that to a film that is like it is a film about like this is the first proper like Avengers film where they're like basically avenging their fallen comrades or whatever, and tonally like that kind of referential material doesn't sit alongside neatly with the other kind of. There's a lot of jokes and stuff in this film which the audience laughed at too hard, but there's some jokes that feel very naturalistic as part of the written material that we've seen before in these characters, whereas that stuff it pulls you out of it. Like, it's very jarring.
There were definitely some jokes in there or things that the audience laughed at.
Things
And
that fell flat.
Yeah.
I think we just.
I don't remember what moment it was, but there was like a moment right on like a character death or something where.
It was after like Natasha died. No?
Was it?
No, they were inside.
Oh.
No,
It wasn't
earlier.
immediately after Tony Stark's death where we
No, no,
cut
it
to
No,
Thor's
it was
face
much
and people
earlier.
started laughing for some reason.
Yeah, Thor was just sad on a cliff, and I was like, oh man,
Everyone's
Thor-
like,
I was
"Ah, he's
like-
wearing sunglasses.
Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
there was this really
Yeah.
somber moment like early on.
And Thor walks in and everyone's like, ah!
I don't know what it
Thor!"
was like that people were laughing at. Someone just said something and people were like, ah, and I'm
Yeah.
like, why is this funny?
I
Can you not let the somber moment sit?
I guess there's an expression in comedy which is that audiences are uncomfortable with their own silence. So if you gather enough people that aren't good at being quiet together, they'll like try and fill that silence. So I think this film was like whenever something uncomfortable happened, people tried to make like laugh at something. So that Tony Stark death is like a great example where they sit on that for a solid 15 minutes of
Yeah.
of slow cuts into different sections and things. And I think people were waiting for something to laugh at so they could relieve the tension of how uncomfortable that was.
I live for that shit.
I
though.
love that shit.
I really do.
Yeah, well,
like I
because-
love to wallow in my own sorrow.
when miserable cunts, Laura, is what it is. But like most people are pretty happy. Like they go like, oh, it's fun. Thor's fat or whatever. Like it's,
That's actually why I think the audience is laughing most of the way through. I think it's because
fat Thor.
it's Fat Thor.
Yeah, like literally every time he was on screen, people were.
It's like it's
What a
not that
fatty.
funny, guys.
"No, he's fat.
Like,
He's fat.
Maybe it was funny the
I
first
mean-
time, but is it funny like the 10th
like,
time? Like
First of all,
what?
he's fat, but he was still clearly
still-
just ripped as fuck.
Also,
I know you
Yeah,
could like.
right?
I don't. Was
Also,
it
like,
was it CG
why are fat
or was
people
it
still
a
funny?
suit?
Is this still a thing that we're doing?
right. And also he kicked fucking butt when he was big Thor
Yeah.
at the end. And I was
Well,
like,
he's-
that's cool to see a fat man kick some ass.
But like, why is fat someone being fat still like a comedy
think-
thing?
yeah.
Laura,
Like,
because this literally everyone is going to see this film, so they were like, how do we play down? Because a lot of the jokes in this, right? Okay, I don't want to like be like too like intellectual or whatever. Like a lot of the jokes in this, if you don't pay enough attention, they're probably gonna skim over you. Like a lot of the subtle, quippy, sarcastic stuff, or even just like there's certain looks in this film that are funny with the way that a character acts or the eye contact they make. And if you're not tuned into these characters, you haven't watched a lot of these. The fat stuff gives you something that is universally accessible. That someone in Disney was like, we need jokes that people can laugh at.
okay, but
Let's
it's,
make Thor fat.
I will say it's probably not in good taste, and there's people that are going to
Oh,
be
it's
really
Oh, yeah.
sad.
It's in
Look,
terrible
It's
taste.
like-
I think
The thing is, you can do fat characters well. Like, one example is in Street Fighter, there's a character called Rufus, who's just like this fat, like schlubby, like wannabe kung fu character, and he's pretty much like entirely played for laughs, and like that's really like just bad representation of big bone people.
Right. Versus like someone like Jack Black, who
Well, no, versus someone called like Bob in Tekken, like another fighting game. But his shtick is that he like used to be really skinny, but he found that he was losing in fights like against other people who were just like more muscly than him. So he's just like, I'm just gonna put on a fuck ton of weight, and if I just move at the same speed, there'll be more force in everything I do.
Yeah.
So this whole thing is like speed and weight.
That's
so it's
cool.
just this massive guy just doing flips and shit and just beating the shit out.
But,
And
like-
it's like, it's weirdly just like, yeah, it's kind of cool.
When the whole butt of the joke is that Thor used to be not fat and now he's fat,
he is
it's in
fat.
very poor taste.
I think, you know, people weren't used to seeing him that way. And I think like it was still very shocking every time he comes on the screen. He's
also
like this,
because the
this
camera
chunky dude.
It was like watching a Zack Snyder film with the hot woman in it, where every time you see them, it's like a butt shot, except for him, it was a belly shot.
Yeah.
The camera drew your eye to it more than it needed to.
Yes.
And I think that's why I thought, I was like, okay, I get it. Like, there's a way you can do that. And also, if you want a washed out alcoholic Thor, you can do that without making him that comical. But then I guess where's the levity in this? Who's the? I guess Ant-Man. Then is your only
The comic
Who's
relief,
Ant-Man and Thor.
like they turned Thor into the comic relief character, and I mean, and like you can use him for that. Like
He already is that.
He does some
We've
funny
seen
shit, but he
Ragnarok.
doesn't need to be
Yeah.
fat and miserable to be the comic
Right.
relief character.
I think, look, I think one of the strengths of this film is showing how every one of the Avengers had a dramatic reaction to half of the population dying.
Yeah, they failed
effectively.
hard, yeah.
And they failed hard, and it's their like their first failure too.
I mean, I like
yeah.
miserable Thor. Miserable Thor is like a good like thing, but like to make him fat and like sort of take away everything that made him Thor like so completely. I don't know. It doesn't.
You're making a compelling argument for why they made him fat. Because it is him, because he loses. It's a bit like Spider-Man 2. Why am I referencing Sam Raimi? I feel like Spider-Man 2 when Peter Parker loses touch with what made him Spider-Man, and he starts to lose his powers, right?
Yeah.
And he goes, well, I'm no longer Spider-Man because I don't choose to be. It feels like Thor goes, well, I couldn't be Thor, King of Asgard,
mean-
God of Thunder. So he goes, that means I am no longer... and he even says it. He's like, I couldn't be who they said I should be. So he just gives up. Instead of going, well,
And then he
it's-
gets a pep talk for his mum, and he
His mom's like,
reaches
"Go
his
get him,
hand
Tiger."
for the hammer, and he's still worthy. And it's like, okay,
Well, because he's always been worthy. But the problem is he's stopped thinking of himself as worthy. It doesn't make you not worthy, right? I think that's...
right.
I like his character arc, but you're right.
So-
I was expecting him to do a Thunder thing and get thin or some shit. Like,
Yeah,
The
I was
whole time.
expecting
The
them
whole
to do
time.
that,
Yeah.
yeah.
instead he got braids in his beard. And I was like, you know what?
Instead it was
And
like,
the braids
ah,
were great.
he's become a
I
dwarf.
love the self-styling hair.
But weird. Like, you're right. Weird call. I like the fact that Captain America swipes up Mjolnir and gets some
Yes.
damage happening.
Oh, that was
It felt like a great
Yeah.
send-off for his character.
Yeah,
that was a
long
good
time coming.
moment.
Yeah, and it... I think the significance of that is probably lost on people that aren't like super intimate with these films, and like we've watched them, we've suffered through these all through our road to Infinity
Yeah.
War, and we talk about these films a lot. I think from a character arc perspective, to see the universe recognize his worthiness
It's
was
been-
cool.
Cap
It's been
certainly couldn't
hinted
do
as
that a
well.
couple movies ago.
Absolutely not.
Well, he nudged it in
He did.
Avengers
Avengers
2.
2, yeah.
And like
He's like the
Thor was like,
and
"Oh."
Thor's like, oh. So
But-
like it's been, this is like, you know,
It's a long time coming.
yeah.
yeah.
But you're right. He was never fully in a point where he was ready to. Because basically what he does is he, instead of what normally Cap does, which is stand by his morals and say I'll do the right thing. In this film, he's saying he's literally being like, I am the only force between the end of the end of the universe. Like, it's just me. And he gets up again. And I like that they didn't give him the line. I like that they didn't give him the line. He just gets up. Doesn't need to be said.
I did forget that the stakes changed to the end of the universe.
Because
Yeah, when Thanos tried to do the click again, I'm like, hold on, what's he gonna do?
Yeah,
And
it's
I
the whole
completely
universe.
forgot that it was the whole
killing
universe.
everything. Yeah.
I
Which-
completely
That's,
forgot. I blanked it.
But it doesn't matter because the snap is bad. So
I know.
the theme
I
works.
also
Yeah,
completely
but
forgot,
still, like,
yeah.
end of the universe stakes really just.
Here's
the
a
last
weird
film.
one. Here's a weird. Sorry, you were gonna
No, I was just wondering where they're gonna go now.
what
Like,
from here?
Yeah.
Back,
Well, I mean, the
back
thing
back
is,
back to street
They
level. I
just
Back
think.
to
go
street
there.
level.
Yeah,
I
back
mean,
to
the
street level.
individual
now.
heroes
Is that-
can still do
yeah.
like street level stuff. This
Is
is
it gonna
like
be enough?
everybody.
Again,
Like-
give me the buddy cop duo films. I want to
Yeah,
see
they
Groot
don't-
and
Yeah, give me
you
more
know,
of that shit.
whoever Rhodey banging around the universe. Like, give me those weird pairings.
Yeah, like if this film ended and like Tony didn't die and they were like, the Avengers are back together,
You'd be
you
like,
know,
yeah.
we're all good. You'd be like, yeah, then you'd be like, well, now you have to go higher. Like you haven't like
Yeah.
You got
Yeah,
the
but-
Dragon Ball Z problem where it's
Yeah.
like, okay, now we had Cell, now we need like someone bigger, and then everyone needs to get more powerful. Like,
yeah.
I think it stops that scope creep of you kill your most powerful hero in Tony Stark and your most your
Well-
strongest leader in Captain
I mean,
America.
Captain Marvel is still
Yeah.
just like in
She's
terms
just
pure-
But
aloof
the-
enough that I don't think
the
that she's a
reason
problem.
I
she's
think
just
the
like
reason
the
that
Deus
it-
Ex Machina.
Yeah.
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 She's above it all. I think that's why she's
The
not a
thing
problem.
is for her is that like she has a whole universe to save where she's
She's
just
busy.
like flying all over the
Yeah.
place and doing shit, so she's gone
Right.
for ages.
She's not gonna rock up in Spider-Man, Far From Home and
like
try and
she's
save
got
London.
bigger fish to fry.
I guess
Right.
that,
Like-
that awesome McConnell video
and
is
she
gonna get
did-
deleted.
She
Maybe.
did
Definitely a real film.
she did definitely like say to the Avengers in this film like, yeah, I'm saving other planets. And other planets don't have you guys.
It was a nice because people were like, where was she the whole? Again, I feel like this is something that's happening more and more with Disney. Is that they feel like their films need to be a response to the criticism of the previous films.
Yeah.
It keeps happening a lot. I don't know if it's just them us covering, but
Anyone that needs more on this, watch Lindsay Ellis's video on Beauty and the Beast.
it's a Beauty and the Beast one. Yeah, thank you. That's a good. I was trying to remember where she discusses it, but this idea that your film should be a meta response to the criticism that people leveled at your original work.
Right.
This film felt like they went, we can do all of that and then also wrap up the stories of these characters. We can explain how everyone's back. Everybody's back except for Romanov and Gamora
And Tony.
and Tony. Well,
And Loki.
Tony Cap. Well, Loki's
Loki.
out. He's out in
He
this
was
TV
dead
show.
in Infinity War.
Yeah,
so,
he died already. They definitely were
We
like.
tapped out from that one.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's super dead.
But everyone's effectively back. They like kind of tied up with the loose ends. We had nice send-offs for our big heroes. But it did feel a bit like they were like, hey, look, we finished Avengers. Are you fucking happy now? Like, there was... I don't know, when they put... There was a moment in the film where they're... toward the end, where they're going through that kind of montage of them kind of grieving Tony. And they put the placard from the...
Oh, yeah.
From is it the first Iron Man film where Pepper Potts gives him the,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the glass
Has a
case of
heart.
the
Yeah,
first...
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's proof
Yeah.
Tony Stark has a heart. That, for me, I was like, that's a really interesting send-off because... That's not for the comic book nerds. That's for the people that loved these films.
Films.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's such a in-universe reference. That's only in these.
Yeah.
That's not. That's
Yeah.
different from the comic book.
Yeah.
That was what I liked. Is they weren't. There were some elements in this
It
where I'm
wasn't
like,
like
Yeah.
the mask or something. Yeah.
right, where there was some
Yeah.
stuff in this where for me I was like, oh, that's for me because I read these comics growing up. Whereas it felt like stuff like that. They were like, this is our Tony Stark we're sending off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact that when he's gone, the cheeseburger thing, like, because as I said at the start, that's when I started crying because I was like, that. I don't know, like that's such an
Trigger
iconic
word.
character. Yeah, I don't know. It just I was like, it was oh yeah, shit. Like that's it.
Yeah. When he
That's-
gets back from Iron Man 1, he's like, I want a
Yeah,
cheeseburger.
they on the way to the press
He's
conference
fucking
when
eating
he-
cheeseburgers
when
all
he-
through that press
and he
conference.
eats. He sits down. He says, "Sit down with me." He's eating a cheeseburger, and he says, "I am Iron Man." And this film ends with
Yeah.
him saying, "I am Iron Man." He snaps his fingers, and then he sacrifices himself to save everyone and Earth and the universe. And then for it to be like, "Your dad loves cheeseburgers," I'm like, yeah. Like, it got me on that level of like.
Ah.
I remember going through that emotion. I remember like slogging through those films with you guys and the patrons. Like I remember all of that the time that we've gone through with these films. And I think that if the Russo brothers were trying to wrap up these stories and trying to give it not just a send off to these characters, but a send off to this phase of their storytelling career, wrapping up with that kind of care to their own stories. It wasn't just fan servicey bullshit. It was like, yeah, Peggy Carter and Captain America, they had their date. It felt very honest. It didn't feel like they were trying to prove a point. Be like, look, we've connected it all. It was just like, here's some earnest things we can end on. And
Yeah.
If you want to find us on the internet, you know how to do that. The best place to support us is on Patreon. I'm going to put up like a part 2 with Adam at some point on this one where we kind of talk about it after the fact. So keep an eye out for that. Otherwise, if you want to follow us individually, I'm at DCM I Hate Pie.
I'm at a little citrus.
I'm at Laura Ducky B.
I'm at A_Arisvari.
Good luck spelling it.
Yeah, good luck.
Thanks.
You're not getting any.
No, no.
Thanks. Thanks for watching or listening. It's been a fucking wild ride to get here. And I'm excited to see what happens next.